Welcome back to another episode of the MGA Library Podcast. My name is Zach Brick.
Zach Brigman. His name is Zach Brigman.
Yeah, having a heart attack. With Jessica Williams and once again with Dr. Christopher Cairney. We're going to be talking about academic publishing. Mm-hmm. Now, most people are aware of publishing, but they probably don't know that there is a niche world in publishing for academia as well.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. So our first question is do you have any experience with academic publishing?
Absolutely. I have experience as a writer of books and articles, journal articles. As soon as you say sort of academic publishing, you're sort of dialing into that journal article idea. And a lot of people are familiar with that you're searching for journals that have been written by academics typically. So it involves, of course, a lot of research and then a process of peer review before something is published. I'm thinking especially of journal articles, but also anything. So anyway, I have a lot of experience. We wear, as professors, I'm a professor of English, and I've been one for a while. So over the course of our career, we wear a lot of hats.
Many hats.
But they're all sort of, it all sort of makes sense, and certainly things related to publishing is a big part of what we do. In fact, we sort of have to publish.
Zach and I were talking just the other day about the three legs of the stool with the tenure track and all of that stuff, and that they're required to. Scholarship is one of those, and if you don't do it, that's how you get your tenure. Yeah.
But of course, as as PhDs, typically is the gold standard for being sort of in the publishing loop, not exclusively. Once I was I was in a classroom, and it was actually in an anthropology classroom. We were talking with Professor Johnson about at Cal State Chico about publishing, and somebody excitedly asked, and we're really talking about academic publishing. They excitedly asked, when can I publish? We're reading this exciting stuff. We really like it. And then they were saying, well, I'd like to write more about this. And this was many years ago, but Professor Johnson sort of paused for a minute and said, he said,
the anxiety is up.
he said, you sort of have to have at least an MA.
Yeah,
to be taken
seriously, and even at the end
of the day, perhaps more, depending. Depending, but with a BA, it's really sort of just not enough normally. But because then you're sort of going for those undergraduate publications. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of opportunity to publish,
and that's good to get you in an MA if you've been published.
That's right. So never say never. It's all part of the process. But as far as the sort of full-on published in a journal that we're accessing through Galileo, and it's not a student publication, then probably it's being done by a legitimate postdoc. And that's true of any part of academia, whether it's liberal arts or science.
Do they take that into consideration before they publish you? Whether you have, say you publish something, and say you're not English, say you're Science magazine or something like that, and you've written something that's absolutely incredible in that field. Would they look at whether you had a master's degree? Do you think
this brings up a really interesting thing, because in English and history and liberal arts and to some extent perhaps sociology, psychology, but the further you move away from, for some reason, the further you move away from sort of English or history or things like that, the more, or art history, those are things that I've been dealing with recently with publishing. You get into multiple authors. Some of those science authors,
there'll be 40 I mean, you have such huge research teams that work on them.
Even in the library,
right?
Science articles.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you can have a lot of people. And of course, I think typically, correct me if I'm wrong, but you sort of have a lead author whose name comes first.
Right.
And a lot of times in the sciences, My son is doing this. He's in a doctoral program, and he's working for a professor, and he's had the opportunity to get published,
Yeah.
but not as the lead author. The
Right.
professor who's running the research team is the lead author, but it's a great opportunity to get your feet wet in
Yeah.
publishing. So to go back to your question about sort of how do you get the attention of a publisher, well, there's one way. It's easy in a way. I say it's easy once you pass the first hoop, which is your professor that you're working for tells you to do certain things. You do them, and he incorporates them into the research. So you get your name. You get you get your name
An
on the
authorship,
article.
yeah.
You get an authorship there. So, but that's sort of invited. And so I say it's easy in the sense that you just do what your professor tells you to do and
Right.
turn in the research, and the rest will be done. Your name will go on it.
Yeah.
So there's that. Now, when you're a single author for like English literature, art history, I'm just saying most of the time those are single author. Then
Yeah.
it's a little bit different because you have to be the one. As the professor who's the lead author of a science research paper, they have to sort of coordinate, which is probably not terribly difficult. Because if somebody is already a recognized researcher in a certain area, and he goes to the usual outlets for publication and says, "Hey, I've got a new research project that's just about wrapping up. Can I send it to you?" And they're like, "Well, of course." Now, if somebody who is just not a professor and not in the industry that pertains, like aerospace. Somebody who's working for Boeing does a paper on something to do with airplanes or airframes or something. Well, they might also be somebody that they'd be interested. Now, if I send something to Boeing astronautics or aeronautics publication, they're probably going to be saying, "I don't think so."
What are your credentials?
Yeah. Can you imagine?
I want to publish a book about. I want to publish an article on the symbolism of children in Flannery O'Connor. This is Boeing.
or worse yet, I've got the new research on hypersonics. And then it's like, and you are an English professor where?
And how do you where did your data come from? Okay, so I think before I ask this question, maybe we should talk about what peer review is in the first place. Do you want to talk about peer review?
Well, peer review is very important. Peer review is one of the ways that we make sure that the research that someone is publishing, and whoever is publishing it, whether it's a journal or that's publishing an article,
Right.
or whether it's a book being published. And by the way, these days with EBSCOhost and other platforms, a lot of time a book really is just a bunch of articles because they're starting to.
They're chapters. They're effective chapter.
Can you talk about
article
that?
chapters. Yes.
Tell us about that.
Someone
How does that
write.
work?
So you'll see them. They'll be edited. So Dr. Cairney may edit a book. He may write one article or two articles or two chapters from that book. He might. The first one will usually be maybe the first one and the last one. But then he recruits other people, experts in that area, to write the other 10 articles or chapters in it, and that becomes the book. And those go through that peer review process too.
So not only does everything have to go through a peer review process, which is a little different if it's an article versus a book, and this would be sort of this is going to be an edited volume with different contributors, essentially doing chapters. But, because they're single author chapters incorporated into an edited volume, then they can be divvied up in digital media in the landscape we're in now with EBSCOhost and others into individual articles for sale. That then they can. So one book can yield from the economic aspect, and this is very important, especially when you get into the hard sciences, whatever that is, and even education can be looked at aggressively as a science from a certain publications' point of view, data heavy, and then of course there's other ways to do education, which is maybe writing about things that are not based on data. So it could be science, it could be not science, but in any case, what happens with an article is it is sent out for peer review. Well, what this means is the editor brings the article in, says, yes, send it to me, we'll see what we see. It's not a done deal yet.
Yeah.
So then he says, I'll send it out and let you know. So then he probably, or she probably, has a list of professors in the field, and he can send it to someone, oftentimes to more than one person. Maybe, let's say we send it to 2 people. And then he waits to see what they both say. If they both say, we like it, then it's going to get published, unless something else comes up. It's going to get published. If one says yay and one says nay, they maybe send it out to a 3rd reader. So there is a process. And the process is a little different depending on who it is, but that's typically the peer review process.
So does it start with 2 people at first, and then...
It can.
It
if they need a tiebreaker,
doesn't it?
Yeah. How does it? Can you talk a little bit about?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but depending on what publication it is, some may have several. The only thing I've ever published, I think I had 3 different people, and you may get immediately accepted, or you may get what I get, or revise and resubmit, and you may go through multiple phases of that. So it as far as the number of people, it depends on what it is. So you'll either get an accepted, a not accepted, or a revise and resubmit, which probably happens a lot, where if there's something or another that you kind of need to tweak or change.
So it's interesting. So with the peer review process, just like that, it could even be, and some people are going to be disapproving of this, and others are going to say, yeah, why not? It might just be one reviewer, and as long as it comes back positive, you're good to go. It depends on how, I'm coming up with this word, but it depends on how aggressive you want to be about it. I will say, on the flip side, after a lot of there are probably, definitely, things that should have been published.
Yes.
That have not been published because they've been shot down. And the reasons for being shot down might bear scrutiny.
Yes.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying it happens all the time,
Yeah.
but it is a possibility that sometimes it can become, but generally speaking, it's a very good gateway to publication.
Right.
Now, having said that, we know that, and now I'm kind of, does the exception, prove the rule? I'm not sure, but we can jump right away to great writings and great research and great books that have been banned, like James Joyce and Ulysses, banned for years.
Yes.
Henry and now it's like
J.H. Lawrence. Yeah.
For being dry.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can see how somebody might say that, but there
I haven't
must
read it since I was 16, so I probably should reread it as an adult.
That's
Dryness
true,
is
but
in the eye of the ball.
James Joyce dry. I'm gonna have to think about that. You're probably from a certain point of view.
You just insulted James Joyce to an Irish scholar.
I like Irish literature much as the next guy. I'm just saying.
But it's not dry in the sense that he's drinking alcohol all the way through it.
Oh, so he
Hemingway.
He took from Hemingway.
or
vice
versa.
Vice versa, yeah.
But there's a case in point that is, those famous experts whose name I will reveal. They say, whoever they is, they say that Ulysses by James Joyce, which was banned for 40 years, is the greatest novel. Or perhaps the greatest novel in English, but the greatest novel, they say, of the 20th century.
Yeah, it's funny how those things change.
Funny how those things change, and yet it was banned for various reasons. Now, that's a certain situation. So, it's good to kind of be open. I think that there has always been a sense of gatekeeping. I think that when people used to send stuff in back in the day to an editor at, I'm thinking like Blackwell's magazine back in the day for English literature for Joseph Conrad, for instance. It was probably the editor-in-chief that simply looked at it and said, yay or nay, or no.
No.
And in some ways, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
After all, it is his magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we have to realize that, yes, it's good when you spin it as good, but at the same time, it's also a form of heavy editing, sliding into keeping the information out of the public eye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
if you're talking about not English, but if you're talking about the hard sciences or the social science, you've also got
You have Galileo.
What I'm thinking of is that you have if you do a big study in social science or in the hard sciences, and what you find is the results are that no that it didn't exist. That may be transformative. It may be that you found out that something wasn't. They want you to find a problem in order to get it published, and if you're not finding that there is if what you're finding isn't an issue,
And
then
it could
you don't
also
get
be
published.
that they have a problem with what you're trying to publish. I mean, that's what happened with Galileo.
Right? Yeah.
And, well, actually, it was because he effectively called the Pope stupid in a treatise. He called him, it was like Simplicico. And he was,
Oh, I've heard of that,
He was like trying to say that he was simple-minded.
The simple-minded Pope.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, then that comes in, to a lot of academic freedom issues could play into that. But I realize that in saying that, we're kind of dealing with one part of it. But in the main, I mean, I think that peer review is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with always with some provisos, probably, if we really wanted to talk about it.
Because it could be that the person who's... because there's like different people peer reviewing it, you kind of take out the bias almost, right?
Right. But I'm thinking about an article that I wrote and submitted to PMLA years ago, and I got the decided impression from the reviewers' comments that they were somewhat threatened as experts in the field, and I was saying, attempting to say some new things, and either they didn't agree because it went against what they thought, which that's why we send peer review, and they are the experts, so there you go. But on the other hand, actually, again, that research was eventually sort of legitimated, so mine. So, so then I was kind of like, these particular individuals, why are they saying no?
So it was kind of your Peter Higgs moment almost, where you had to wait a while until it was proven to be factual.
And I mean, this is my perspective. Of course, nobody likes to have their stuff turned down.
But you sometimes wonder why.
Yeah, and you can't
Or
help but wonder
speculate,
why.
like, is it because I said something overly controversial that you just didn't agree with, or was there...
Well, and the other part of it is watch the publication and watch those people, if you know who they are, because after they turn yours down, their research may suddenly look a lot like what they read.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a jungle out there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I'm talking about certainly boundaries, and in the main, peer review serves a very good purpose.
Well.
But it's not completely holy and sacrosanct. That's what I would say. It's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Do you want to
We saw something in Hunger Games a few months ago that the person didn't seem like she knew that there were 3 movies referred to it funny, and it had there were more.
There was an article about Hunger Games.
The grammar was so bad it was unreadable.
Wow.
And it was a peer-reviewed magazine. And it was a peer-reviewed journal.
And the person was from Indonesia, I believe.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a weird article.
You wondered if it was sometimes you get translations too, and it's really hard to.
It felt like you were having a stroke when you were reading
it. It was bad. It was bad, and I looked it up, and it was a peer-reviewed journal.
So somehow their procedure involved either some automized, translation, or it involved something at the end of the day wasn't good about their procedure.
Something
and I
was
think
off.
the person was studying English.
I think it was it might have been a master's student or something. I don't think it was a PhD.
I recently worked on the Conrad publication that recently came out, and the reason that I helped them edit that was because I was asked to as a native speaker of English, because so many of those wonderful articles are coming from experts that are in Poland or the Czech Republic or Italy or this and that, and so they wanted to put it under. There were several of us who were American professors or British professors, native speakers of English, who then went through those articles and at the end of the day suggested some very small changes of style, leading to sort of to better capture the emphasis that they might be after. So we made suggestions, and then the editors, it was up to the editors to either accept those or not, but they were very appreciative of the work that I and at least one or two other professors, American professors, did.
Yeah.
So at least they had a procedure, which apparently this other article didn't go.
It just
through
fell through the crack. You wonder if it just somehow fell through the cracks.
Yeah, just the editorial procedures weren't there because it is a multi-headed beast, that you have to deal with. That's why it takes time.
What's the average time between in peer review? Is it like a couple months? Is
From
it
the time you submit to the time you get it published?
Yeah.
I would say easily a couple months. I mean, that doesn't mean that it has to take that long, but I think that based on my experience, you'd be wrong to sort of expect it back before a couple months. And hopefully you're
before you get an answer.
Right.
Before you get an answer.
Right. You have to wait.
How long is the entire process?
That can be a year.
It can a year, more than a year.
Or more than a year, sure. Yeah.
Do you want to skip ahead to the question about how academic publishing affects how it's tied to being a tenured professor?
Yes.
In the scope of Middle Georgia State University?
Yes.
So
different things that one of the things that we have to do.
Let's shut off. Camera went off. Okay. Okay. So the question is about how does academic publishing what is the nature in getting a tenured position at Middle Georgia State?
Right. No, I totally understand. So every school, and we're part of the USG, so we follow University System of Georgia policy. So it's going to be the same here as it is at Valdosta, as it is at UGA, as it is at Tech, wherever you are. It's all essentially the same. That there is a process. We're expected to publish. There is that old saying about professors, publish or perish. So that is a requirement. And so what we're talking about today is part of it. Of course, there are other things that we're doing as well, which is we're advising students. That's very important. We're teaching classes.
Yeah.
And so there's things that we're on committees.
Organizations.
And then there's organizations. So it's quite a lot, really, that we try to do. Have to be pretty organized. And then if you're here, it's the requirement to publish is absolutely in place, which is challenging because at a research university, which we are not, we're a teaching university. If we were like UGA as a research institution, the professors are going to be teaching 2 classes, right, instead of 4, right? And so that really eats up our time because it adds to the advising, it adds to the office hour time, the time with students. Everything's increased. The grading, the time in the classroom, everything's increased. But be that as it may, we still need to. Every professor needs to publish. Just maybe it's not quite as full on as it might be if one.
Is there a certain number that you have to be published?
Never mind.
No, it's the red light's blinking.
Yeah. I look over and it's black. It takes a moment from the red to the black.
And I would say that you want to try to get either a publication every year, which is totally unrealistic in my humble opinion. I've tended to do it myself because that's a strong area for me. But it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult to do. So because research for a new project, and I've talked to other professors about this here, so we publish one now, or just short of now, and then we have to come up with one for the other one. So we're going to do all the research, plus turn it in, plus get it peer-reviewed, plus get it published. See, a year is not sounding like enough time.
No, yeah.
And if you're really trying to do research, which of course is what we're trying to do, that alone could take a year.
Yeah.
Or 6 months if you're really struggling. So the idea of publishing something significant to be a single author journal article or a chapter in a book, which is another great way for academics to go. But to do that like clockwork every year when you're teaching 4 classes,
It's time consuming.
people just aren't doing it.
You understand why you have so much professor burnout.
Well, it can be. It can be, and also, I mean, it's some of it's a pressure you put on yourself because people just aren't doing it. And so if you put that pressure on yourself, then that's. But now the other side of that is this sounds very negative. Those of us, I would say, I would go out on a limb and say that for the most part, and I think this is a good thing, professors are in the professor profession because we like to write and we like to do research and we like to do it right and we like to get published.
Yeah.
And so, but it's just all I'm saying is that in terms of the peer review process, we may not be able to come up with something, certainly not a book, maybe not even a significant journal article. And when I say a significant journal article, not all journal articles are the same in terms of how they're judged, in terms of, in general, but also in terms of a person's sort of, every year you go through a review process. What did you do for us lately? What have you published lately? So, like I say, sometimes it's hard to, coming up with a major book every year. It's just not going to happen. I don't know that it's going to happen with a journal article either. So, but we have other things that we can do. There are chapters in books. We can write prefaces. All of these things are given a certain weight in the USG, so that if you do a lot of little things like prefaces or chapters or you're a chairman of a panel at SAMLA at the Southeast Modern Language Association conference, a lot of little things can kind of almost add up to a big thing. So it works out. It works out. It keeps us busy.
So when it comes to peer review, I'm almost positive I remember Georgia Southern's English professor, well, all of their professors had to publish maybe 3 peer-reviewed articles before they could get tenure. Is that a requirement throughout the USG? Do they have to be?
No,
do
that's
you have
another
a certain...
thing, because I was sort of thinking about what we're kind of looked at every spring. We're looked at in terms of what have you
your post tenure,
in the,
your pre
wherever you are in
wherever
your career. You're either pre tenure or you're post tenure, and so if you're leading up to tenure, there's a sense that you need to try to do as much as you can leading up to tenure. But once you get tenure, then it doesn't stop, because then you're still expected every year to try to do as much as you can to help the university. And I think
you can't just go like, I got my tenure, I'm done publishing.
No. And so it's a good thing. It keeps us busy, but sometimes on the publishing, if you're trying to come up with stuff anyway, which many of us are trying to do, we're doing the research anyway, but then the idea that you're going to turn up the volume on the speed of the research, there's only so much you can do with that if you're also going to do a good job, which of course is our most important job, is just teaching. And then the other things which are also very important, which is doing committee work, engaging with students as an advisor, engaging with students as a club leader, all those things.
Is it more difficult? Is one more difficult than as between books, articles, and book chapters? Does one take
Well,
more
a
time?
book is just a bunch of articles.
Yeah.
So it's going to take longer, and it's going to take some coordination.
If you're writing the whole thing.
Right. If you're writing
If it's
the whole
not
thing.
an edited volume and you're not.
Now, you're not going to get as much credit for being the editor of a collected volume, although that is an awesome thing to do and a great, cool. It's like being the producer of a movie.
Is that viewed upon favorably within?
Oh, it is a wonderful thing to do, but it's not going to be looked upon as strongly as being the single author of a
book.
Of a whole book.
where you wrote everything, and nor should it be, But hey, it's all hard. It all is what it is. It's all valuable. we learn from all of those things. We get better. So yeah, it's all good. But yeah, the gold standard, of course, is single author book. But that's not going to happen very often. You know, you have to space those out, I think.
Yeah.
So
You do 10 articles and they become your idea for your
If
book.
you're smart.
so the output of like Stephen Hawking was very rare. Of like how much books that he was churning out a bunch of books, wasn't he? Because he probably has like 10 books to his name, doesn't he?
I don't know
more.
how many, but I know
But
several
yeah,
that I
yeah, well, I mean, that's just, let's face it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty that's a great
outlier.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wonderful thing. I want to just keep it positive and just say, well, wow, what a thing, what an inspiration. But we're just not. Most of us are not going to be able to attain that. And also, he may not have been exactly having the sort of teaching requirements and whatnot. Although I'm not saying I don't know. He very well may have been teaching, but it just. I think he had attained a place in life where he could pretty much do whatever he wanted.
And you have such high stature that you've got research teams doing. You may
That's
be
true, too.
You may be writing it all, but you've got.
You're
You're not the
people
one out
pulling
there
the data
doing
for
it,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, which takes us back to some of those STEM articles that have so many authors, where the lead author is the professor, and then he has
8 graduate students that
working,
went out
doing
into the field.
you do this part. Can you do this part? You try to do this part, and then when it's all done, bringing it together. It's still a lot of work. It's
Yeah.
a very legitimate way to do it. Some great research, but it does at least lessen the work. That's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that the professor is coordinating everything and guiding,
Yeah.
which is his job.
You're
or her
effectively a
job.
project manager of the data
There
collection.
you go.
And that kind of explains those CVs where the publications are 8 to 10 pages worth of the CV too.
There you go.
So we talked about the difficulty of and we talked about the length. I guess we could go to the final question. Do you have any advice for colleagues or students who potentially want to become academically published? Like, what would be a good holistic process to start?
Well, for an undergraduate, I would say somebody who, any chances that you get to publish through an undergraduate conference, we have some great opportunities right here at Middle Georgia State University to do that with the undergraduate conference. We have the Knighted Journal, so there are some great opportunities to get yourself published. Now, after you've gone beyond sort of that student, that undergraduate student sort of situation, if you're planning to go to grad school, if you get into grad school, if you are a graduate student, then you should you definitely need to find a professor to attach yourself to, and that will take you into a lot of opportunities.
Right. And think about the professor you're choosing and that their area is similar to what you're
All
interested
those
in.
things.
Is that very difficult to do? Did you have an incident where you attached yourself to a professor and then you found another one where
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing that goes across.
Can you
not
have
just-
multiple professors that you can be mentored
in
by?
fact, you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
You do. Every professor that you have is your mentor, and you want to be very open to that because that's where you learn. But in terms of the way things are structured, you'll have a chairman of your dissertation
Your
committee,
thesis committee,
or your thesis committee. You're going to have a chairperson for that, and so you need to. It's a very good thing to think about your background, what you're trying to do. Think about what professors are available, and it's not going to be always an automatic fit. Sometimes you have to perhaps change what you're doing to fit what she's doing.
Yeah.
And I hate to break that to you, but that's the way it is. If you're at a school, if you got yourself into a school and agreed to go to a school for graduate school where the emphasis is on one area of study, let's say, let's talk about physics, astrophysics versus I'm just saying arguably,
yeah.
maybe another school might be more
theoretical or
something like that. So if you're really interested in this, then that's where you should go. And that's something I think that a lot of us went through. How well you negotiate those kinds of challenges and relationships, it's not always going to be the same outcome. A lot of it has to do with who's there.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with how well you present yourself to him or her. But I think that you want to kind of try to find somebody that you're compatible with, and try to help them, and they will try to help you.
Yeah.
That's academia.
Very good.
Yeah. It's very much it's not like a dog eat dog world in academia.
No.
It's very much like, oh, you have a problem, let me help you out with it. I have a problem, help me. Could you help me as well? Right?
Yeah. So it's a practical thing, and it works out very well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for providing us with information on academic publishing. That was very thought provoking. Now we move on to our funny little bit of where the guests ask me, the host, a question, and it can be a hobby, it can be anything, it can be a wild card where I just talk about something random.
Dr. Cairney has had to come up with how many times have we done this now?
So we didn't do it the first episode. We haven't done it the first episode.
That's true.
We did it with your episode with Anne.
That's right.
And we did it with
The Gothic episode.
The Gothic episode, which will be coming out after this episode because of the weird snowstorm. That was weird. And we also did it with another librarian episode. So, did you have a question?
Well, I'll just start out with a question that I've been meaning to ask Zach for a while. So when was it that you first realized that you are a Carpathian vampire?
Well, it happened when I was in the woods. And then a strange man approached me and said, "Hey, you want to see something cool?" And then he showed me his teeth, and I went like, "That's pretty cool." And he was like, "I'll show you something cooler." And he bit my neck. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not into that.
Did you go to the doctor?
No, I just put some. What's it called? That stuff that you put on cuts. Neosporin on it. I was like, I'll be fine.
Works every time.
And then this is the problem.
I kill a couple of cows a day. It's fine. But,
high protein diet. But seriously, what is it that you're going to publish your next publication that you're aiming for? Could be this year, could be 3 years from now, but what do you want to publish?
So, I really want to be a fiction writer, but there are times where I'm like, oh, this would be cool in my day job of being a library assistant and hopefully eventually a librarian. I'm like, oh, this would be a good academic publishing, and I have been published before in an undergraduate. I was published in the Night Journal, and I had to present my it's not a capstone, it was more like a research seminar for my history degree. But I wouldn't mind being published probably next year, but whenever I think about the publication process of like finding an agent and then the editing process, it goes like, oh, that's kind of scary. I just want to go into a hole and just curl into a ball.
Don't be afraid to send your stuff directly to the Swanee Review or all these. Just send it directly there. The worst they can say is no, and they don't always say no. And sometimes they don't give you an all straight across the board no. Sometimes they give you a maybe do this, and that's nice.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be an agent, especially if it's a short story. Now for books, it's a little different.
Book, you want to have an agent.
Yeah. I have
Fiction.
I have sent short stories out, and I got a no back. And I was like, oh, that hurts my feelings. There was one time. This is a funny story. We can end it on this story. If Jessica doesn't have a question, I was going to send a short story to be published in a in a journal, a magazine in California, and I made the payment, and then I realized I didn't attach the story, and I got an email back, and they're like, "Were you trying to attach the story?" I was like, "Yeah, but now I'm kind of freaking out." And he's like, "Well, here's a subscription."
Well, that's hilarious. That is absolutely
and I was like, "Oh
hilarious.
man."
Well,
That's
this
fun.
brings up a thing. If you're going to be a writer, you've got to develop, if you don't already
thicker
have
skin.
it, a thicker skin.
Yes,
You really do.
yes, you do.
Because rejection
You're
will
good
happen,
at
and you just
journaling.
have to, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Get a therapist.
Think about yeah.
No, but I mean, you have to have you have to have a thick skin,
And
Yeah.
you can only publish so much.
Yeah.
So
and it's not always going to work.
Because even like books, like they don't want you to publish more than 2 in a year, because that's why Stephen King got his alias, so he could publish like The Running Man and all that was published in a pseudonym, because they're like, we don't want you to like oversaturate the market with Stephen King because it'd be kind of bad.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
you'd always be on the bestseller list. None of our other books.
Isn't
would
that
be
the goal?
So there's Stephen King on the bestseller list, and then there's this other person who looks a lot like Stephen King, and he's on there too. Very interesting. That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do you have a question, or you just...
It wasn't boring. I'm kidding.
So we lost that recording, so they don't understand.
We
We
that's
lost
right.
that recording.
That's right.
So I don't think they're going to get that joke. Oh man! As usual, it's fun to have you with. I can't wait to find another topic to have you on again. That's going to be fun.
So we have a great team here. It's
Yes.
great energy.
It is.
It could just be you.
Okay. Well,
It could just be the radiance that you have and your personality.
I think it's the
that-
room. There's something about this room.
Yeah. It sucks that
Yeah.
it's not conducive with technology.
Well, it's better than the other one.
It's better than the other one.
True.
And thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. Please watch the other episodes.
Yeah.
Please comment, like, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And reach out to us if you have a topic that you want us to talk about.
That's a great idea.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.